All right, McCurdy, we are live.
Oh my
Hello,
gosh.
everyone. We saw
Hey,
Bond. We
how's it
want to talk
going?
about Bond because we never talk about Bond. Again, this is Two Brews. We're just going to drink beer and talk about Bond because we never do that ever. McCurdy's been sick. What do you have?
It's Miller
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. Cheers. Uh, um, you had
Probably.
something horrible with your throat?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's back now. So we are going to talk about No Time to Die. So, just to keep this easy and somewhat short, we made a little list, each of us, 5 things we like, 5 things we don't like, and overall, I think just when it comes down to, um, uh, I want to just lightly compare them to the other Craig movies. Let's forget about all the Bonds we've talked about, everything pre Casino Royale, and let's just um, actually, I'm just going to do that first. Just right off the bat, my overall impression of the Craig era is Casino Royale is, about as good as it gets. It's, you could easily say it's a masterpiece. As far as James Bond is concerned, it's like probably the best adaptation ever. Quantum of Solace, I think, is super underrated. I think Skyfall is super overrated, but it's obviously good. I think Spectre is an unforgivable piece of shit. And then I think this one for me is certainly above Spectre, but it doesn't beat the first three. It's just so it's like I would
I'm
put
in the
this at number
same camp,
four.
but I disagree. I definitely think it's better than Quantum.
Yeah,
I
it's
think Quantum's very forgettable, and I think it's overrated. As much as you want to say it's underrated, I don't think that really matters. I think this
yeah.
one's a much better movie. I think it's
And
a much better experience. Um,
obviously,
yeah, okay.
we'll
All that
get into
being
that. We'll
said, we'll
get
get into
into
that when we
like
get to
we'll go into that in
months down
depth.
the
But
road.
but
Yeah.
overall, I'm just gonna just say that quickly.
This is for me, this is like number 3 for
Okay.
those movies. Like it's Spectre, it's either Casino or Skyfall number 1, and then number 3 is this movie, and then Quantum, and then Spectre at the very bottom.
Okay. Yeah. At least we agree that Spectre's at the bottom.
It's
But
not.
yeah, I just
It
always,
really
and
aggravated me.
briefly, I just always liken Quantum in the same way that for any of you Zelda nerds out there, it's like you have Ocarina of Time, which is this masterpiece, and then they follow up the masterpiece with something that's just it's a darker follow up, and it's hard to compare the two. It's kind of hard to compare Quantum and Casino, because it's like it literally like Majora's Mask. It's like Link finishes up Ocarina of Time, and then he has this weird follow up that has to do with the game. But Bond in Quantum is going through, he's reeling after what happened in Casino, so yada yada yada. I think those are two movies. Those are like the first. That was the first time we had a sequel in the Bond verse ever, and then now we have it again because Skyfall's right in the middle. You have the first two movies are sequels. Then you have Skyfall, which is a one-off, and then you have Spectre and No Time to Die, which are
And when you're speaking of
sequels.
sequels, you're speaking of like directly tied to the
Yeah,
last movie. Which I mean, if we go back and talk about the Connery films, you're like, oh yeah, those movies are actually more directly tied than people give it credit to, because
but
people I
they're
think
in succession, but they don't. You could watch each of them individually and never,
yes
other
and
than like
no.
Sylvia Tench. What else really? And Spectre,
They
of
set
course,
up they
but
set up,
like,
what I'm saying is if you watch those first 4 or 5 movies, they're much more tied together. Then I
yeah,
think Goldfinger is obviously it's very set apart, but
mhm.
like you watch Thunderball and then you watch uh, uh, You Only Live Twice. Those movies, I think, are a little more tied to the ongoing story, or at least some like a very subtle ongoing story about Spectre.
Mhm.
Um, and then after that, they kind of gave up on doing that, and then everything's very very loosely tied together. But we'll talk about that
Yeah.
in this
Let's
movie as
let's
well.
use that to segue into No Time to Die, where the I'll 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 start with the one of the things that I laughed at, because as much as I really dislike the movie Spectre, I laughed my ass off at how they erased Spectre entirely within like in about 30 seconds. It was like, oh, remember that crazy criminal organization that runs the world. They're all dead.
So was that your
Blofeld, they're
like
all
or
dead.
dislike?
I it's I put it in a dislike, but at the same time, because I hate Spectre so much, I enjoyed it. But judging the movie, it's something that I didn't like because it was so clear that they were apologizing for how bad Spectre is by making a new Spectre. Okay, what was the name of this bad guy? I don't even know what his name was.
His name was I have to go look it up.
Okay, Rami Malek. Whatever.
Rami Malek. Okay, so actually that was like my second thing I didn't like about this movie was reneging everything on Spectre and in a way apologizing. But like you and I have talked about this before about Star Wars and the new series versus the hold on, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to post this on Facebook so people know that we are here on Facebook. Okay, cool. You're like, now they know.
We're live.
So yeah, that's the thing that's annoying is with the Star Wars trilogy, the new ones, the sequel trilogy, every film feels like it is a response. It's a response to the last movie. So the Force Awakens is a response to fans not liking how the prequel trilogy in general doesn't really feel like the original trilogy. So what do? We make it so much like the original trilogy. The second movie is hey, you guys made it too much like the original trilogy. There's nothing new here. And so then they were like, okay, well, let's do a movie that's completely different and changes everything. And people really didn't like that. So then the third movie is, oh, you didn't like that, so let's go back to like making it really heavy on the nostalgia. And I felt like that was kind of the same thing. I think it was all summed up in one line in this movie where Q turns to Bond and he's like, because of the we should say spoilers on this, of course, but because of the
we never even announced spoilers because it's like it should just be.
Let's just say spoilers.
Don't ever watch anything we do unless you don't want to know what happens. You know, spoiler alerts
because the plot involves a kind of a creative way of doing like a germ warfare or whatever you want to call it, but it's like specific to different people. There's this line where Q turns to him and is like, well, we know he's not your brother because like that the chemical was meant for Blofeld. And it's like, okay, I get it. You guys were trying to renege on everything that was Spectre.
But we knew that they were half brothers. We knew that they were never blood relatives.
But that's
like the point you're trying to make is proved even harder. Where again they take and we haven't covered
I don't think
Spectre,
they were half brothers. They weren't half brothers. They were adopted.
Sorry, they were step brothers. Adopted.
They're not. They're not.
The fact that they straight up killed Blofeld, just they don't even. He's not even on camera when he dies. They just cut over to him and he's like, it was so unceremonious. It was just like, oh, yeah, remember that guy Blofeld who's supposedly the biggest baddie? Remember, I caused all your pain. Like, he orchestrated Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace and every other installment that you know and love. Bullshit. And I'm saying all this knowing that we haven't covered Spectre yet, and I'll go in depth about how much I can't stand Spectre. But they did erase all of that. So on one side of my brain, I like it. On the other side, it just reminds me of how awful that movie is and that they could have just made a one-off. They could have just made to follow up with what you've been saying about the Star Wars thing is that it's so clear that this is a franchise that used to just be like, yeah, these are all linked, but they're just kind of linked by Bond himself and the characters around him. And they're not, you don't need to have seen all of them to watch the new ones, yada, yada, yada. With this now, suddenly they have 5 movies that are supposedly all sequels. And it's quite clear that there was never a plan, right?
Yeah, that's actually something
relying on you thinking that there was a plan. So it's like they're like you said, each one is so reactionary to the last one. It's like we need Casino's so big that we need to follow up with a sequel. And then whatever excuse, the writer's strike, all that stuff doesn't matter. It was a flop for them. So then they pretend that it never existed. They make Skyfall and they do a one-off, but then it's so everybody loves it. So it's such a big hit that they feel the need to, okay, now that's part of the family. But Quantum is, it's just so, it's so reactionary and loose, and it's quite clear there was never a plan, and it's like, hopefully we get back to just fun one-offs that it doesn't, it's not required that they all be loosely tied together, because you just start to see the seams. And
Yeah.
if you're going to do this again, go into it with a plan, please.
Well, that's something I was gonna put in my one of the things I liked about this movie is, even though, like I said, I pretty much agree with you as far as the reactionary parts of this movie, right? Like that stuff. But as much as I have issues, and there's some other things we haven't talked about yet that I had issues with this movie, that kind of can be summed in the same thing. But even though everything was reactionary, I did like how this film wraps everything up more from a character type thing than just kind of like, this is the last movie, kids. And that being said, like, I really enjoyed so the last movie, we haven't talked about Spectre on our official show, but like, we talked like Spectre, that movie, they very loosely are like, well, all these guys were Spectre agents, and you're like, and the reason they explain that's really lame. And this movie, I liked how, even though, and I know one of your things that you probably didn't like about this movie, we'll get into, but Bond and Swan, like, they're on their pretty much their honeymoon, or like whatever you want to call it. They're off in the very beginning of the movie, and she's like, "You're not going to get over this girl, are you?" And then he's like, "Well, I better go pay my respects to her," or whatever. And I liked that was part of Bond's character in this movie, was that he can't trust her, because even though he fell in love with this girl, that we see their on-screen chemistry, the Vesper Lynn, and there was like this really good relationship there. He knows that she had actually betrayed him, and like that's always haunted him. And so I liked that still haunts him today, when it's hard for him to get close to anybody because of that. And I liked how that was kind of a driving force for some of the story in this movie, and I liked how that was something I really liked about this movie, I should say.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things I liked about it.
Yeah, and I will agree. It just, because of what I just said, that it's quite clear that they don't go in with a plan. The first time I watched the movies new, I'm a little cynical whenever I see references to Casino or whatever, and I'm just like, why are we doing this? But you're right that it led to something. Him being worried that maybe this new love is going to betray him, and then Blofeld orchestrates her supposed betrayal. It's
a stronger connection to a previous movie than like lazily being like, they're all connected because I typed it on a computer.
Manufactured all your pain. Like,
yeah, like,
did you really though?
But now we actually see it visually, and
Yeah.
it works really well, and I liked that.
So,
Charlie, what was something you liked about this movie?
So I have something that's on my like and dislike list. The cinematography was beautiful, but then the whole movie is dark. Like, you're in Q's house and all the lights are off. You're in different parts of MI6 and all the lights are off. It was driving me nuts. Dude.
Charlie, we know why. Charlie, we know why the lights were off in Q's house. Okay.
And yeah, why were all those candles lit? Yeah. Well, yeah. Going to the title of this broadcast is "Now We Know What Q Means." Okay.
No,
you're baiting me. I'll get right into that. The thing about that is,
I don't have a problem with that.
Well, of course, I don't have a problem
I didn't
with
care.
it on its face, but I have a problem with, like, because here's the thing: as we talk about every episode, the Bond series follows trends. So I'm cynical about it, because, like, on its face, if Q was a new character and he's gay, I'm like, whatever. But it comes across as, I'm just as cynical about it. Well, okay, to bring up Star Wars again, I'm just as cynical about it as with Star Wars, where they make a big deal, big show. We're gonna have gay characters. Yeah, we can put out all these press releases that like paint this picture as progressive and all that. And then what do you get? You get for a tenth of a second in the background, two women kiss, and you barely even see it. And then they can pretend that this whole movie is like super
I
progressive when really it's nothing. It's just so they can put out the press release and claim that they're changing the world, but really they're
well,
not doing
it's not
anything,
that.
you know.
I would say it's more running the middle of the gambit, trying to not be one over to one side or the other, because I
Yeah.
feel like if you're making a movie, I feel like, and it's meant for a wide audience. You want as wide audience as possible, so you don't really want to
Yeah.
offend anybody on anybody
But
who
it was
has
but
any
like
either
but
belief.
what this is why I'm
But the
no,
thing
no,
why it
listen,
doesn't
listen. The
bother
reason
me.
I'm cynical about it is because it's just an offhand throwaway comment that is only there for people to clap, and it has no bearing on the plot. It has
I didn't find it
like none
clappable,
at
but
all,
okay.
because when that's why it's there, so people go, "Woo!" You know, but there's no bearing on the plot whatsoever, and that's what bugs me, because when has Q's sexuality ever come into play? Octopussy is the one time, but other than that,
But again,
he's
this
just the
isn't the
guy who
same
makes the
cue.
gadgets. He's
No,
just the
this
guy who makes the gadgets, and
but this
to
comes
do
back
that is like
to
kind of it comes across as lame, and it's literally turning to the audience and throwing out a little pandering, and then starting the movie back up.
I I get it. I get your issues with it. I don't have as much an issue, but it does raise another problem. Like we'll get into that final problem in a second, but it raises another issue with the overarching problem with this movie. So I want to go to something that does bother me about this movie,
Okay.
about another Bond ally, and that's Felix Leiter in this film. I felt like their relationship came out of nowhere. Like it felt very unearned to me. And I say that because the last time we saw Felix was in Quantum. We didn't see him in Skyfall or in Spectre.
Yeah.
And they play it off like they're huge buds. And it
Mm.
only makes me wonder in my own head canon. And again, this goes back to what I think is a problem with the Craig era films is, and you said that's like, well, they didn't really come to these films with a plan. They it just seems like they never did. I think
Yeah.
the issue with Craig era
Let's
films
see how this
it
movie does, and then
but
whatever everybody said, whatever they're tweeting of that they don't like, we'll just take that out of the next movie, and then we'll add in whatever they're tweeting they do like. You know,
well
it's reactionary.
to me what's problematic about the series, and other people have commented about this, is more of it's not about the reactionary as much as it is about what is or is this a reboot or not? And that's kind of where it comes down to. And that's
Yeah.
why the problem with the thing with Q I don't care about. And I don't care, like it just kind of was like, oh, okay, this Q's gay. I don't care.
But
Right.
let me
That
interject
doesn't
there though.
bother
Let me
me.
interject there though.
It doesn't
It
bother
was
me
it
because
was so
hold on,
small.
it doesn't bother me because it's like, well, they never really established if if this is Boothroyd or not. Because as you know, you and I know that in the books, this isn't Q is not his actual name. He's Major Boothroyd.
Yeah.
They never say if he's Major Boothroyd.
Yeah.
But they also, because of the way that these five films are all kind of connected, they never establish if any of the previous Bond movie stories actually happened or not, and that's kind of problematic for this movie
But you and I
in
agree
a
that
couple
they
of
did.
ways.
You and I agree that these 5 movies are self-contained. And
I
they
don't.
make
They're
references
not,
to others, but they
and
make
that's what's hard.
references to other ones, but it's quite clear that these 5 are self-contained. Now, the only argument you could make is that Bond is in Casino Royale, and then all the previous the first
You could say
19
this.
20 movies that they all they take place maybe before Skyfall or
My
something,
head can
right?
Yeah, like my head canon is somewhere between Skyfall, or between Quantum and
Yeah,
Skyfall, or between Skyfall and Spectre. There were some, or if not all, the Bond stories that happened in the
sure.
previous eras had happened, or some version of them had happened. And it only say that because it's like, well, Judy Dench was a holdover from the last film, and they
Yeah.
decided to just bring her back in. It just felt very odd. And then, like, even Q's comments about, oh, we don't go in for, like in Skyfall, he's like, oh, we don't do the exploding pin thing anymore.
Mm.
And it's like, well, that's kind of a callback to the previous era. So, are you
GoldenEye, yeah.
saying that Daniel Craig Bond was active? I mean, he's old enough; he probably could have been active in the '90s or the '80s or whatever. So that's generally like what I think is an overall problem. But my problem with the Felix scene is the last time we saw Felix, like they were kind of at odds with each other.
Mm.
Casino Royale, that was like he was his ally. and they were setting up something for potentially future films. And then unfortunately, Jeffrey Wright is only in the next movie, and then in that movie, he's kind of like he's kind of there, and
Mhm.
then but he's not really a an ally. Like they kind of change things around with his character. He's not like the strong ally. And then in this movie, they're like buddy buddy. Like they've gone through the trenches for so many times. And if
Yep.
you're like the you know, if you're a viewer of these films and you just aren't really paying attention, you'd be like, oh yeah, Felix Leiter. Yeah, I remember Felix Leiter. He was in Doctor No. Oh yeah, I remember him in Goldfinger, or whatever movie. And then it's like it makes sense why Bond and him are best friends. It makes sense why Felix gets, he gets shot and all this stuff. And that brings to another point in a
But
second.
with
But
Felix
my
though,
issue is just like
well, yeah, you're saying
that
that
whole
you think it was
relationship, that
unearned.
whole thing was just like
Yeah.
what
For me
like
though, I never question it in the same way that, and it doesn't, for me it doesn't really matter if it's like is it part of the Craig movies or is it part of the previous bunch? Felix Leiter, like it takes something like License to Kill. Yeah, we have all the previous movies to kind of weigh in on the importance of Felix,
yeah.
but it for me
But see,
it's
that's
like
the thing is the other
Felix is
movies
Felix to me
gave me
with
that.
that. So I didn't think that much about it because even with those movies, it's like we've been on all these adventures, but we've never really had a movie that was like purely the two of them through it. It's like Felix pops in and out. So that didn't bother me as much. When what I specifically what got to me about the Q thing is that I think Q is a horrible choice because Q has only ever been he's just the guy who provides the gadgets. If anything, I think he's just like an asexual nerd. And I think that if because if you're the Bond franchise and you're following trends and you're like, we need to introduce a gay character to appease a certain crowd, I think Tanner is perfect. I think Tanner is the type who he could get a phone call in the middle of the night, like we saw previously with Judi Dench as M. She would get, she gets called and it's like, answer the red phone. Tanner gets called in the middle of the night and he's laying there next to another man. Boom, done. But instead, we get this like vague thing with Q it just felt out of place. It felt out of place for Q, the character. It felt out of place so far as how they went about it. And that's what I mean. Specifically, like from a filmmaking standpoint, how they went about it. Having a gay character, obviously, I don't give a shit. But how they went about it and who they chose is what bugs me because
It
but
doesn't.
like, listen though, whose sexuality matters ultimately in the Bondverse. All I can think is Bond himself and Moneypenny because Moneypenny's always hitting on him. Other than
Yeah.
that, we're never like we do go home with M, but only Judi Dench is M. She wakes up with her husband one time, but other than that, we don't care about anybody's home life. That's why I think it was just kind of it
You were
works for
more
non-Bond fans,
upset,
but
but Charlie, you were more upset because you have an issue with just how things are going nowadays versus just the fact that the character's gay. And I just like I
exactly
don't give a
the
shit.
choices
I
they made.
don't care.
You
I don't
being gay
care.
on its face, I
I,
don't
who
care.
cares?
How
Well,
they
well,
went
then you're
about it,
making it a
I
bigger
care
deal than
about.
it really needs to
Yeah,
be then.
because like in the Star Wars thing
But what
again.
I liked, here's
Hang
the
on,
one thing I
let me
did like
cite
about
Star
the scene
Wars though.
though.
Let me cite Star Wars as an example of what I'm talking about. In
Okay.
Star Wars, they make a big deal about having a gay character, and all we get is like a peck. Instead of having two people who have an actual interaction throughout the movie. That's what like when they
You
have those
wanted
press
it, so
releases.
you're saying
If
you're
you're
wanting
gonna
it,
do it, go all out. Go all out. Don't give me this pussyfoot and
but
shit.
I'll also interject to say I don't at least for me, I don't remember ever seeing a press release or anybody saying, "Oh, Q is going to be gay in this
Dude,
movie." I never
go,
saw it.
go Google it.
I
It's
never
like
saw it.
go Google it. Anytime they
So
do it,
for
Toy
me, I
Story,
just didn't
Star
care.
Wars, any franchise does this. They make a big hullabaloo about it, and then you watch the movie. Okay, it reminds me of
Then we're
South
spending
Park.
way
Remember
too much
South
time
Park?
talking about this.
South Park, where they're talking about, they're like, oh, this TV show, they're gonna say shit, and they make a
Mm-hmm.
big deal about they're gonna swear, and then they're watching it, and a guy just goes, hey, you got a little shit right there. They're like, oh, okay, thanks, and that's it, and everybody's like, they swore on TV. It's making a big deal of nothing so that you can attract attention. I'm talking about in the film. I don't like the way they went about it. I think they
Here's the
could have
one
done
thing
it a
I did
lot
like about
better.
it. Here's the one thing I did like about it, and maybe you will appreciate this. Remember back when we talked about Goldfinger and how was it It was Guy Hamilton. He made the choice that that Bond and Q do not have the best relationship.
Yeah.
I liked the fact that, like, if you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, that does kind of fit. Even if he's gay or not, I mean, he could have been not gay, and they wouldn't
Well,
work too. But
if
what
Bond
I
gave him
liked,
hell for it, that would be
I
great.
just,
You're
I
not
just,
allowed to, but wouldn't that be great?
no. What I liked is that Bond's interrupting this guy, and he's like, Bond, I'm on a date. Like I'm trying to do a thing with another guy that I don't get time to meet, and you're fucking coming in here and you're asking me to do all this computer crap, and I'm like, I'm busy right now.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't care, I'm on a mission. Like, I liked that. That was just something I liked about it.
Yeah.
But moving forward, what was something else you liked about the movie?
Obviously, you're going to talk about action. I think specifically though, I think the forest scene stuck out. The other
Oh,
stuff,
I didn't write that out.
I say all the
I didn't write
time
that
that
down
action scenes, my eyes kind of glaze over because
because you're an old man. I get it.
because I'm an old man and I know what's going to happen. And
But you're right. Yeah, I
but
didn't.
the forest scene itself really stood out as it's kind. I mean, every car flipped over, which is kind of funny. I'm like, every car has been flipped over, but the forest scene stuck out as something that like I don't think we've ever had a scene like that in Bond, just so far as action
No,
is
you're right.
concerned. Plus, you throw into that he has his his baby mama and his baby running around too. Then you have that awesome For Your Eyes Only style crushing the bad guy, right? Like avenging
Yes.
Felix, like that, like
Yes. I liked that.
that was
Like those
the forest
out of
scene
those
was like
two,
top notch action.
out of those two scenes, yeah, I didn't write that down. But out of that, what you're talking about, I really did like the smiling guy. I don't even remember the character's name, who you think is a good guy, or you think he's a part of CIA, and then he turns out he's actually working for Malik, and you're like, oh crap, who is this dude?
He's the most unlikely Bond villain in
I liked,
history.
I liked that character. I
Yeah.
liked that douchey character because he comes
Yeah.
off and he's just like this.
Well,
He's
that
not
guy is
like,
always a douche, and then he shows
yeah.
up and he's a goofy douche, and then he turns out to be the villain.
And then you're like, oh, I love that. No, I actually,
Yeah.
that was something I really liked. And then I liked
Yeah.
that scene. But you were bringing up action. I really liked, I liked the DB5 action scene. I think that was actually one of the best versions of like seeing the DB5. I know they keep bringing it back a lot, but seeing it in this movie, I thought they did a really, really great job with it. Because like, even remember, like when you first see it in Goldfinger, the chase scenes at night, it's kind of hard to see what's going on. And I think, to me, like, even still today, as we're ranking these movies, either between the chase scene in for The Spy Who Loved Me with the Lotus, or the chase scene in shit The Living Daylights. So, like, still the two best car chase scenes up to this point that we've gotten to. And I know there's some other good ones in Brosnan, but I thought this one was very good, considering, like, even the last movie, it's like, it's dark, it's at night, you really can't see what's going on. I just thought it was really nice to see, like, him using the DB5 and car action and like broad daylight. I thought that was really cool.
Like I said, I complained about the cinematography, but that I
thought that was really good. Yeah,
because otherwise the whole movie is so dark, and the movie's so dark that I'm starting to think, like what we've talked about before. I'm like, now I want Bond to get goofy again. I want Bond to be fun again. I thought, get away from the serious stuff for a movie or two. I'd be okay with that now.
But okay, I'll just go into that. I thought, here's the thing. I thought, as much as, like, you and I have talked about Ghostbusters, the 2016, and you and I always talk about this movie, and we're always just like how much we hate it and how much we don't like it. But the thing that most people will say was kind of the, like, oh wait, was the fact that Chris Hemsworth could do comedy, and everyone was like, wait a minute. This guy can do comedy. And then they changed all them, and it seems like after
was that before or after Marvel though? Wasn't he kind of being funny before?
No, it was before.
Okay.
He was played more for a serious, like, you could tell a distinct difference between when Ragnarok came out and then the last Thor movie, or the last Avengers.
1 beer warning, by the way.
I'm 1 beer warning. Damn, I'm not even I'm not that far. But in the same way, I know. In the same way, I thought with Knives Out, with the fact that the last movie I think Craig was in was Knives Out, that most people had saw. Yeah. And you saw a different side of Craig. And I did feel like I didn't write this down in any of my notes as far as things I liked or disliked because I could see it kind of being somewhere in the middle. But you could definitely see that uh, you know, Kerry, say his name for me, please. The direct
Fukunaga? I've never heard of it
Fukunaga.
before. Gary Fujuki Vajaka Fukunaga.
That
That's
was one other
accurate.
thing. I liked his
We need names for that.
I loved his direction in this movie overall. But I thought that I feel like Craig maybe got to him and took him to the side and said, "Look, this is my last movie. Can you let me do something just a little different?" And I felt like you felt that in a lot of his scenes. So I did appreciate that. And I thought that it was kind of a reflection of like the more lighthearted Bonds that you saw in like the Roger Moore era, or even when, even ever in the Pierce Brosnan films or whatever, you have a little bit more tongue in cheek humor there, here or there. And I felt like this film gave a little bit more of that than I think I was expecting, especially for like a movie that's kind of the ends of Bond.
Yeah.
So I really liked that part.
Wait, the end of Bond? What do you mean? Before we get to that, real quick, Nikolai QWERTY and K1 are here. What's up, fellas? I'm just gonna read what they wrote here.
Sure.
Nikolai says these 5 movies are definitely self-contained. I agree. The whole theory of combining this timeline with the old one is just insanely dumb to me. It makes 0 sense. I agree so far as, I mean, like McCurdy, you want to throw a little headcanon in there so that,
I'm saying in
that's
headcanon.
fine.
I'm not
That's
saying
fair.
like
But
exactly
yeah,
everything that
but
happened in the
like,
other
but
movies.
officially, if they ever were to claim that, it's like, no, it's more like you've been making these movies, and then after the fact, you loosely try to time together. It's ultimately irrelevant. It's
I
clear that
only
these
say
5 are
that they
self-contained.
feel tied
It's clear
together.
these 5 are self-contained because he becomes a 00 in the first one, and he fucking dies in the last one. So,
That's true. I
hopefully
say
you've
that
all
they
seen the
feel
movie.
like they try to slightly connect this when Skyfall came out and they were like, "Oh, here's the DB5," and you're like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah,
And that to me felt like Sam Mendes being like, "Oh no, I want to sort of tie these movies back together in
yeah.
a weird way." And I felt like when they introduced that and then they brought everything together and they were like, M's a guy again, kind of like he was in the original. We got
Yeah.
Moneypenny again because we didn't see that in Quantum. And so
It's more
when
like
at
a
the end of
reference, though.
Skyfall,
DB5 and Skyfall is more of a reference than it is like something official.
sure,
Because Bond had a Bentley, right, in the books. Like
mm-hmm.
it's at this point, it's all references in the same way that we have all the time. I mean, I'm sure you loved all the Secret Service reference. Hey, Nikolai, did you love all the Secret Service references in this movie?
I
But
did.
but
I was
I
gonna
liked them
say
too.
I was
They
gonna
were
say that
fine.
was another thing I liked about this movie because if there's another movie I want to compare
You
it to,
liked Secret Service references?
get fucked. Uh, the thing I was gonna say, if I was gonna compare this movie to another movie, because this is the final film for Craig, was the final film for Pierce, and that being Pierce Brosnan's last movie was the 20th movie, so it's kind of a nice round number, and you're like, oh yeah, this is his last movie.
Let's glorify it. Let's pump it up with all
Let's
these
put all
references
this
to other
kind of
movies
like,
and go all
yeah,
out.
let's
Yeah.
kind of like talk about all the other ones, and so it's like
Yeah.
it's laser, it's space lasers and like do all this crazy stuff, and it feels similarities. There's a lot of yeah, that's kind of similar. But I felt like this movie did things more in a much classier way.
Totally.
And like even to the effect of like you're in that one hall and you see the other ends from the previous
You
movies and
saw Judi
portraits and stuff.
Dench and you saw what's his
And
name
that's
who
why I was
replaced
like, these
Bernard
movies
Lee,
are
but
connected.
you never saw Bernard Lee though.
I
But
know, isn't that
those
weird?
I saw those and I was like, those are references. That cannot be official. That's just fun. That's just having
Come
fun. Because,
on.
but like,
Come
to
on.
Nikolai Quack's point, you got to do some
But
mental
Charlie,
gymnastics
that
to
that
tie all
brought
these
me
movies together.
that brought me to one of the things I did. I actually didn't
Before you
write
do
this
that,
down.
before you go back to your list, let me just go through these. These are brief. Nikolai says Judi
Okay.
Dench is literally a different M in Casino Royale than she is from GoldenEye and Die Another Day. Like GoldenEye through Die Another Day, saying that that's a different M. Maybe it's. I will always say that Daniel Craig is self-contained. That's the only way I'll ever see it. Those movies are
That's
self-contained. That's like a
fine.
separate
It's
series.
fine.
They brought in Judi Dench because it's like in the same way that they have what's his name playing J. Jonah Jameson in like 3 different world universes and stuff for Spider-Man. But anyway,
Yeah,
QWERTY
yeah, I
says
got you.
hi. K1 says just got to work and this pops up. I'll catch the re-upload and rip it apart. Looking forward to it. And then Nikolai says Ben Wishaw himself is gay, and I feel like it fits like him being gay in this fits his cue. That's where I disagree. Where
Okay, we don't care.
I just think that
I don't
Q's
care.
status is just
Whatever.
Q's just he's asexual to me. He's just a nerd to me. I think
Sure.
I still think Tanner was the way to go. I think Tanner was like the shoe-in for just a guy whose home life we might run into. But anyway, go back to your list.
So what would I was gonna say, because of all the nostalgia and all the homage and stuff, and some people were even I did see a video, I haven't watched it yet, but there was a video pointing out how Honor Majesty Secret Service is kind of more meant to be the last Bond film. And not in the sense of like, we do this movie, this is the last movie, but more in the sense of like, this is a story that could be the end of a story. And you see that a lot in comic books. There's a lot of stories that had been written, like I think it's like Superman Band of Tomorrow or something like that, where they basically wrote a Superman story where this is actually his last story, where he dies, where he ends. But it's not, obviously we know there's more Superman comics after that book was written. In the same way that like the killing, some people have also said that about Batman's The Killing Joke, is that that story was meant to be the end of the Joker, the final Batman story in a way, even though there's more stories after that.
Of all of these franchises, at a certain point, you have things that just
you're right. It's like but it's like writing.
You can do whatever
the characters
you want.
are still there, but this is like the final story, but it's not the end of the franchise.
I said in one of the episodes that as a kid, that's how I interpreted these movies, because it was like Blofeld always looked different. I kind of saw Bond and Blofeld the same way I saw Joker and Batman. Is like, don't think of other movies when you're talking about these, because that's how I interpreted it as a kid, because I saw these all on shuffle and these characters were always shifting up and changing, that it was like, just see them as like archetypes and don't call it different universes if you have to, but just don't regard them all as one linear thing, because they're not. For one reason or another, they're not.
But okay, so my point though that I really wanted to get to though was that I felt like the title, they could have titled it something else, and I thought it would have been a perfect title for this fucking movie, and they didn't title it this. And I don't know if there was a legal issue behind it, but instead of it calling it No Time to Die, they could have called it All the Time in the World, and it would have been a perfect title for the movie, because it would have fit. It would have fit so much better. And I was a little frustrated.
That would have been cool.
Because they play the music, and I'm like, it takes me back.
This isn't a Die Hard movie, you know.
It takes me back, and it's like
No Time to Die Hard. Yeah,
because there were a lot of people. There were a lot of people that had thought that Malik's character was going to be Dr. No, and that's not the case, as we know.
Yeah.
And,
okay, so that Malik's character.
Let's talk about Malik's character.
Yeah, that goes back to what I was saying about how it was so odd that he wiped out all of Spectre. Not that he did it, but that it was clear that they were apologizing for the movie Spectre by wiping out all of Spectre.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, what I kind of thought would have been better, because here's what's weird in this Craig universe, it's so easy to start a massive criminal organization. Blofeld does it. Blofeld happens to be his stepbrother, and he starts a massive organization. This guy does. Silva does. All these Silva, it's believable because he's an ex-agent or whatever. But apparently anybody can start a massive criminal organization. And I thought it would have been more appropriate if Malik's character had taken over Spectre, or at least like taken it over. Whatever, he changes his name.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, take it over rather than use his giant criminal organization to kill off another giant criminal organization. Because then it starts to become that thing of like, where do all these henchmen come from? Where does all this money come from? What is going on? And as opposed to it would have made sense if that could have been Spectre Island at the end, and another reference, and he takes it over, rather than he already had that and he used it to kill Spectre. Because like, I get that Blofeld killed his family or whatever, but it's like, does everybody have a criminal organization now?
Some critics have pointed out that Malik's character is just a villain with a backstory, but that's really it. And it's like, I get it, because like the motivations are there.
Screen time than any villain in any.
The motivations are there, but what's problematic is that we don't really know. It's to me, it's like, why now? So like, he kills Spectre, but now why? Like, why now? Why not? you know, like I agree with what you saying. It's like it would have made more sense had he just killed Blofeld and taken over Spectre, and
Yep.
then it's like,
And
and
why did
then
he fall in love with
you
Blofeld's
know,
daughter? Cordy says, when I first saw that island, I was like, Spectre Island. Yeah, that's right.
I liked.
Welcome to Spectre Island. Yeah, they needed the Russian guy. What's his name? The old Russian general there to like,
Oh yeah,
welcome.
We'll go Spectre. I liked how, like I said, I liked how this movie, you know, plays into the nostalgia and the homage of all these other films. And I did like the island aspect and how they were like, well, Bond, you got to go to this island. And there's a lot of the movies where, you know, the final act ends on some kind of island. And I liked how, like, even when they're in that, where they're developing the germ warfare or whatever it is, the high tech thing, where they're developing it. It's like everyone's wearing these suits that are so reminiscent of Doctor
Doctor
No,
No.
and
Yeah.
I loved that. I was like,
Yeah.
that's a
Little
nice little
touches like
nod.
that are
I
always
liked
great.
that,
That
and I like that.
doctor, the like weird Russian or whatever he was, doctor, he so easily could have fallen off the cliff to being goofy, but like he was funny, but I took him seriously the whole time. I thought he was such an interesting character. It's such an odd choice to have this guy with the heavy accent and not ever have him go full ridiculous.
Yeah,
You know, like
yeah.
I thought that was interesting. It was like he managed to balance that weird character so well. But but then at the end, he said something like, "I could save your people." He's saying this to the new 007. He's like, "I could save your people," and then does he say, I'm gonna kill all the Africans"? Does he say that?
I think he
He
references that.
he like threatens all of. He's like, I'm gonna save all your people, and then he's like, I'm gonna kill all your people, and then that's when she kicks him
Okay,
into
wait,
the
and then
poison.
she gets the line. She gets the line. The
She gets the
Bond
Bond
line.
joke, right?
She gets the
Yeah.
Bond joke.
Well, no. Bond had a Bond joke. He had
He did. He did.
I blew his mind.
He blew
So
his mind. I like that.
yeah.
I thought
What was her joke?
she said,
She said, "Time to die."
time to die.
Yeah, but
Throws
that's
him
not a
off.
Bond joke. There's no pun to that.
I thought there was. I thought
Cordy Manor says that he said your race. So Cordy, didn't he say I can save your race? And then he said, and then in the next moment he's like, wait, never mind, I'm gonna kill your entire race. And then that was when she
okay.
kicked.
This brings me back to one of my issues with the movie. This brings me back to one of the issues. The reneging of things. It happens twice in this movie, and I thought
Because
it
there's
was
15 writers.
there's four
Ultimately, I know
writers.
that's going to be your
There's
point.
just four. There's just four writers in this
Well,
movie.
you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. My issue is there's okay. So the first one is Bond. You know, when Bond finds out he has a child, which I thought was a bold move, and I actually liked the fact that they did that because it's something that's like
It's
Bond
appropriate.
has slept with so many women over the years. Like, of course, he's probably got
It
some
doesn't
kids
make sense with
someplace.
Casino Royale because he lost his testicles. But now we know that
I don't
he
know if he
didn't, I
lost. I
guess.
don't know if he. I don't know if he
We all
said he lost his kids.
speculated that he did.
Yeah, well, that's your headcanon.
Was that it? No. Even what's his name is himself is like, if you don't relent soon enough, you're not going to be able to have kids. And
Well,
so the theory was always
stranger
that
things
he
have
couldn't
happened,
have
Charlie.
kids, and then we come to realize that he did. But Cordy
Listen,
says he said,
I've been
I can eliminate your entire race.
okay.
So, but yeah, Cordy, my question is, didn't the guy say at first that something like, I can help you, and then he threatens her entire race, and then that's when she kicks him, and it's like, well, yeah, of course, but he says,
okay, he lost his double O. So wait, go back to
O's.
what Courtney's talking about though. This is what bothered me about the movie. So they show that he has this kid, and then she's like, it's not your kid. And then next scene, it's like next couple scenes later, it's Malik's like, oh yeah, that's you got Bond's kid. And so we all know it's Bond's kid. It's like, okay, why did we have to have this?
Well, we
Like, I
knew the
kind of
whole
from a
time.
character standpoint, maybe, but it's like come on, it's obviously
Yeah.
Bond's child. Like,
Well, and he says, he's like, look at the eyes,
Yeah, exactly.
And we all know that,
and then
that she's
but
lying.
then
Why is
then
she
the other thing
lying?
was the double O thing, was where it's like there's this whole like kind of, and I think it was fun where they're like, I'm 007, well, what does make you kind of thing. And then finally she's just like, I want to reinstate Bond as 007. I'm like, who cares at this point? Why is this such a big deal?
But
I thought that
I
was
will
such
say, though,
I just thought that was so lame.
you and I, leading up to this movie over the last year, I've been saying I'm not looking forward to this
because you're a piece of shit.
I worry that they're gonna do some more pandering stuff, and they're gonna pass it on in like this obnoxious way. I have that on my list of things I liked. I thought they handled the new 007 stuff pretty well.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of odd that I still have no clue why she went and hit him up. Why was she there in the first place? Which, as a side note, on my list of things I liked, I thought the GoldenEye reference was a nice touch. Having Bond retire
and he goes to Jamaica.
In Jamaica at GoldenEye itself is a nice touch. But I don't know why she showed up, but overall, her being kind of threatened by him was good. Them walking through MI6 and everybody's calling them both 007 was good. Her saying, let's reinstate him, I thought that was appropriate. I don't know.
It was just when he was like, because they'd already reinstated him. And then it was just let's make him 007. I'm like, why? Who gives a shit at this point?
Yeah. She's like, oh, I bet you thought that they would have retired the number. And I was like, this isn't the NBA. They only have 9 numbers. They can't afford to retire any. But I think technically you could do 0050. I think if you really wanted
they have 12 numbers, I think.
But in my head canon, it just like in Thunderball, 001 through 9, and that's it.
Yeah, I think in the books it's cool. 12. I think in the books it's 12.
Who wants to be 0010? Who wants to be 0011? It's weird. I think 001 through 9.
You can't be 0010. Well, I guess you wouldn't be 00. You'd be 010. I guess you're right. That makes sense. Now I see what you're saying.
But you have to be a 00.
I guess that makes sense. That makes
specific.
Sense.
But
and then speaking of that, so Ana de Armas, her screen time, like that was something I didn't like. It was like, oh, she's just in this movie for this one sequence.
I have that on my list too. I have on my list. I don't like the trend they've had the last couple movies, which is they take the hottest babe of the year and they make a big hubbub about how she's in the movie, and they put her. I mean, at least in this one, she had a full scene. And remember
sequence.
In
it wasn't just a scene; it was a whole sequence.
Yeah, sequence. Yeah. Remember in Spectre when they had in the opening they had the Mexican supermodel, and she walks with Bond. She goes up the elevator. She gets in bed, and then that's it. We never see her again. And they make a big. It's like she's a Bond girl. She's a Bond girl. We can put her on the poster. We can.
But her whole thing was the whole thing with her is that you're talking about in Skyfall or in Quantum,
in Spectre.
Or whichever one. It was one of these.
Remember
movies
in Spectre, in the opening of Spectre, Bond is doing the Day of the Dead thing. He's walking with the chick. She gets on the bed and she's like, "Where are you going?" He creeps out the window. That's the opening shot of the movie, and we never see her. It's marketing. It's bullshit marketing. And this chick, they're like, she's a Bond girl. Like, it's weak. It's like have her have a stronger.
I will say this though,
in the movie.
Charlie, I will say this. I think it's funny that we're talking so much about the marketing of these movies because these movies are coming out versus the movies we talked about on the show because we're ranking them after they've been out for a very long time.
Yeah.
And talking about them in that sense. So, and then when it comes to the marketing overall, it's like at the end of the day, these are movies that are made for profit. And this franchise is, I mean, hell, like there's everything.
We talk about it every episode.
Every episode. Omega watches, Bollingers. Yeah. Like
Rami Malek, he just won an Oscar.
Put him in the movie.
What's her name? Billie Eilish. She just won a Grammy. It's like everybody who just had something. Let's
put him in the movie.
Just put it all in the blender.
Yeah.
But like this, I don't know her name. The actress we're talking about. She's great. Just having one sequence, and then at the end of the sequence, Bond's like, "It was great working with you." I'm like,
I loved it.
Okay.
I loved her. I thought she was great.
Yeah, she's great.
I loved her.
But like, put her in the whole movie, please. And because overall, I get that. I think it was appropriate.
It was a push go to shove thing because it was a thing that you had a problem with On Her Majesty's Secret Service. That was like, well, Bond's like in love with this girl, and then he goes and sleeps with all these women, and then he comes back with her.
Bond hadn't seen his baby mama in 5 years or whatever. I would have been fine with him being with this girl, and then he meets the baby mama, and he's like,
It's
sorry, I
fine.
got to go back to being a
It's
one
not
woman man. It would have
that's not the
been
issue,
more
but the
fun.
issue is more of like a character thing. Like you're more in tune to being like, oh, I care for this guy because he hasn't been with anybody else since the beginning of the movie that starts, and it's just more of a psychological thing. If you saw him with like another girl or five other girls, then you're like, it's kind of a piece of shit, but at the same time, you're just because then it
Not like
adds.
Secret Service, man. Secret Service, it's like bookended by him being with Tracy, but with this, he breaks up with this woman he thinks betrayed him. Then he meets up with who Qwerty says 3 weeks training. Yeah, she had 3 weeks training, and she's like flipping all over the place. He also says there should only be there should only be 9 00s. I agree. I think that's cool. He says elite class. I agree. It should be just like the best of the best. And I don't think there are always 9. I kind of like to think that when one dies, they're immediately replaced. But sometimes it's almost like there's only a few. Like there aren't always 9. But anyway, that's beside the point. With her though, it's like I'm torn about it because these 5 movies are self-contained. Naturally, there should be a little growth with Bond, especially because Bond, the character, coming from the books, he is always kind of considering leaving the service to have a home life or whatever, and then he gets sucked back in. So for him to sorry man, you gotta go.
I do, but let's wrap out your point, and
Sorry,
then
let me finish my
we can
point.
tease the ends.
Sorry, what was I saying? So it makes it's interesting for them to go the route of, okay, let's start considering Bond having a kid, and we can do that because these movies are self-contained. The next movie, obviously, if Bond dies, Bond's had a kid, Bond's maybe getting married. You can only do it in a self-contained series, is my point. And so I think it's fine that they did that, but I could do without it. I'd be fine if they went back to just interesting one-offs rather than unless they go into like a trilogy with a plan. I'm fine if they just go back to one-off movies that are just fun action movies, because Bond should be getting with this 3 weeks training chick. He should have her throughout many sequences of the movie, and he should be doing Bond stuff with her. Instead, she's just there to. She didn't need to be there. She's there so they can put her pretty face on the poster. I wanted more of her. I
Yeah,
think everybody should want more of her. And instead, it's like now Bond is, even though he broke up with this woman 5 years ago, he's going to be a one woman man now. And when he says goodbye to the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen in my life, he's like, it was fun. It's like, I don't know if they did it for Me Too reasons or what, but it's just
I
more
don't.
of what I've always complained about, which is when you strip away the things that make Bond, it makes for a less impactful and more boring movie. And that's why I'm torn. On the one hand, it's interesting to finally give Bond a home life or a chance for a home life. And then on the other side, I'm like, but I miss Bond being Bond. You know what I mean?
Sure. So my last thing I was going to say was 2 things really, but my first thing was last thing I liked about the movie was that Bond dies in this movie. I liked that this
That was on
movie.
my wish list. I told you
I
months ago. I was
love
like,
you
they
did.
have to kill him.
You do.
They have to.
I actually liked that. I liked that this movie gave some finality to the entire series.
Did you
And like
cry?
you could see,
Did you cry?
I did. I did.
I had a moment.
I did.
Yeah.
I teared a little bit. I was like,
I was
shit.
sitting next to Nance, so I was like, hold it in.
The joke
Conceal, don't feel, but I was like,
that I keep saying is should have been called "It's No Time to Cry." So that was a joke I kept saying. Everybody's saying about this movie was it's no time to cry.
But here's the one thing I'll say on that though is that as much as I was like I was a little verklempt. I had a moment where I'm like, this is the first time I'll ever have watched James Bond die. So I had a little moment, but I also don't know if I like the way they went about it strictly with just that shot, the choice of shot when he is just standing there.
Yeah, you wish
and
you'd
all the
seen
CGI,
maybe
just a CGI explosion kills him.
think
I'd rather him like be on the ground and literally watch him die rather than watch a CGI explosion happen. You know what I mean?
I think the reason they chose the shot they did was just to say he's dead. Like
he's dead as fuck.
He's
no
dead as
questions about it.
Like,
yeah.
'cause I think
He's not coming back in the post credits.
No, you saw the explosion, and had they shot it in a way where it's like maybe just a close up on his face, or just like kind of seeing the explosion happen from like, you know, him there, and then we see the island far away and the explosion.
Yeah.
Like that stuff's left to like, okay, but then maybe you can come back. Like, you don't want that. You want, this movie was completely, and that's the thing, the strongest part I like about the movie, regardless of any issues we've had about it, regardless of any pandering of all this other bullshit. I liked that this movie, the entire movie, was built on the purpose of being, this is the final movie. Let's make it a finale. We're killing off Felix.
Yeah.
He's having a kid. He's finding his,
Let's kill off Blofeld.
like,
They
kill
killed
Blofeld.
everybody.
Let's just kill Bond at the end of the movie, but do it in a very respectful, classy way. And he's doing his mission at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
And
I love
sacrifice.
that.
I mean, like
He sacrifices. I
any
love
kind
that.
of
Fucking love that.
sacrifice is fantastic. And the fact that it would have been interesting had it. I mean, in the past, it would have been sacrifice for his country. With this, it was sacrifice for his wife. I keep saying wife, his baby mama and kid. The thing about it is this, though.
It's not just that. It wasn't just that. It was a sacrifice for the world, because like, if they hadn't destroyed this, he's like, that was the whole thing. He's like, if this is on you,
it would have been destroyed either way, though. It would have been destroyed either way. If he would have gotten off the island, the only people at risk, if he would have escaped, would have been baby mama and kid. Right?
Yeah, but he had to make sure that those things were open.
Else.
He had to make sure that thing was open, because if it wasn't open, those things weren't going to get completely destroyed.
But tell me this, though. Tell me if there's a little bit of a flaw here, because maybe I missed a bit of dialogue or not. But they keep saying that the nanobot tech is irreversible. But tell me, why can you not use EMP to purge your body of little micro machines? Why couldn't Bond have gotten off the island and been put through an EMP?
I don't know.
The only thing would be is,
well, I don't think it's.
Listen though. If they would have said that the nanobots are EMP resistant, just like in View to a Kill or whatever,
yeah,
I'd have been like, oh, okay, then he has to die. But like, I kind of wish it. I'm torn, because
I think
he could have EMP'd and cured himself. But at the same time, to absolutely make sure that his daughter would survive, he had to die. You know what I mean?
Okay, so here's the thing. One thing is, he was not going to try to die himself. His mission was, he was going to open up the doors so that when the missiles came, that they would actually destroy everything. If the missiles didn't, if the doors were closed, then there's a chance that something could have been survived or let out. But he wanted to make sure everything was completely disintegrated, basically.
Yeah.
The fact that he wasn't even sure if there was going to be an EMP or whatever. Like, I feel like from a military operation, does the military necessarily fire off a weapon that has just specifically EMT? And if they were going to do that in a movie, it's like, well, now you got to write this whole thing to explain this to the audience. It's clear and it's easier for the audience to understand, hey, you know, these missiles are just going to destroy everything. You don't have to worry about it. It's not a nuclear blast. It's still like whatever. It's gonna wipe it all out.
The point is this: Bond had already accomplished all of that. And then at that point,
he had to open the doors. That was the part.
Yeah, but he already did. He already did. He'd been shot, and
he had to run back to open the doors.
If he had not been shot and he was fully healthy, he could have run and jumped into the ocean, and he would have survived. Which, by the way, Cordy says EMP can't kill nanobots, I guess. But my question to you, Cordy, is: did they ever? If Q said that, you know, if somebody was like, "Well, let's just use EMP and destroy all the nanobots," it's like they're EMP resistant, then that's fine. Ethan Blastoise says, laughing my ass off. I don't know what he's laughing at.
He's laughing at everything.
Hopefully he's laughing at the fact that I'm pointing out this EMP thing, because Bond literally has an EMP watch, and it's like, we can't cure the bots inside of you. But I unless somebody sees something I didn't see, that's where I'm at. I'm like, it's a sacrifice to make sure that absolutely without a doubt his baby mama and kid are going to survive by dying. That's fine. But there was this little shred of hope that he would get away, and then Q could just blast him with EMP, and that'd be fine. K1 says, did not like Dead Bond. They are killing this series for Craig's ego. Well, but
no, that's bullshit. And here's why it's bullshit.
You mean you don't
watch the end of the movie?
You didn't like the way they went about it, or are you not liking that Bond died full stop? Because
and I think
again, to reiterate, I said to McCurdy months ago, I'm like, I hope they kill him. This is a unique opportunity to kill Bond, and and part of me wishes they would have gone about it a little more subtly, but also it was like the one. I mean, in what other Bond movie can you kill Bond other than a self-contained series? So I thought that was interesting. Cordy says, "Nah, they didn't say that it was EMP resistant." I agree. So why can't you kill nanobots with EMP and then they don't murder your baby mama and daughter?
Oh my God, Charlie.
I know, but
okay. So what I was going to say
it's
though,
like the biggest. I mean,
to
Bond
K1's
he didn't have to die.
all right,
You know,
to
that's what I
K1's
mean. I
point
wish he
though,
would have just been shot in the heart and just like died protecting his country and his family and
K1
all that.
says
That would have been
K1
better to
says
me.
no other Bond got a big send off this like this, and all deserve it more. I don't necessarily agree. I think it is proven that Craig has probably had more like a better chance of better Bond films than a lot of the other Bonds. I think Brosnan maybe got one really good Bond movie. Moore's maybe had two.
Cordy says
Connery got
Roger Moore
two.
deserved to die.
You know, but I also will say this: the end of the trailer, the end. If you watch,
Corey, I agree. In any other movie, Q would have been like, the nanobots. It's a tough thing, but I'll work on it. You know what I mean? Like
Did you sit? Did you
forged.
sit at the end of the movie? Did you sit to the end of the credits?
Me?
Yeah.
I was with Nans, and I
I
know.
know.
Nans
Did you? So you left? I
Yeah,
sat to the
I
end of the
didn't say it.
credits. I
Yeah,
sat to the end of the
what's
credits,
there?
and you know what's there? Bond will return.
Oh,
So they didn't kill it. They
I knew
didn't. They
that,
didn't.
yeah.
So to anybody who's complaining, like they stopped the series, and like I said, beginning, this
we
is
knew
a
that.
this is a story
It's
that
never
could be
going
the
away.
end of the movie.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean Bond's never going to return. So they made it
Daniel
for the
Craig
audience.
is never going to return.
The Bond
Like,
Craig films
we all
are
know
done.
that.
That's fine, and I don't care.
Yeah.
Like that's great. This was a good in chapter to the film, and like that was the other positive thing I thought is like Craig actually got a final movie, a movie that was catered to be the final film. Every other Bond since, it's for reasons why they left. Connery was tired of playing Bond. You know,
Lazenby was a hippie.
Lazenby was lazy. Lazenby was a hippie. Roger Moore got old. Pierce Brosnan,
he rode that out.
Brosnan kind of also got old.
Timothy Dalton didn't care anymore.
You know, like that. Those were the reasons why they left. But this movie, they actually had the chance to be like, let's actually give you a good movie. Let's give you a final movie. And that's what I liked about
nobody else was subject to a reboot. I mean, not even Pierce Brosnan with Goldeneye. Goldeneye, as we talked about, well, I'm cutting that episode together now, but
yes,
as we talk about that episode, Goldeneye was it was definitely not a reboot. It was a you can feel Bond's age in that movie. You can feel that he's been through some adventures and all that.
yeah.
This, Daniel Craig rebooted it, and then now he's killed it. I think it's appropriate for his series. I think it's appropriate. Now, I wish that they would have done all singles or again, for me, it's like do all one-offs or go into a series with a plan, and they had no plan.
I think well, okay.
So.
Well, here's the thing about that. I think, Charlie, I think we should save some of this conversation for when we do the Craig, when we actually get to the Craig films, because I do have a lot to say about that. But what I want to say to the viewers, at least the guys are watching, if you guys would make sure you've gone on there and tell us what you think about what is it? World Is Not Enough, correct, Charlie? Is that what they need to talk about on there, the next film?
Oh,
you don't remember, do you?
Well,
I think it's World Is Not Enough.
Tomorrow Never Dies was. I mean, I think
Tomorrow Never Dies is next. So we are cutting.
Yeah.
Charlie's cutting Goldeneye right now. It'll be out soon, right?
Give me
next
a couple weeks.
You've had a couple weeks.
I took some time off.
Get fucked. Anyway, make sure you watch Goldeneye when that comes out, and then we'll make sure you post what you think of Tomorrow Never Dies and the rest of the Pierce Brosnan films when we get to that. I've got to go. I've got kids to put to bed and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Can I knock off the last thing on my list? Give me 30 seconds.
Knock the last thing off.
The last thing is it's part of something I didn't like. Like I said, Billie Eilish. I think the first time I heard a Billie Eilish song, I was like, "Oh, she's cool. She's talented." But as time goes on, I think that her brother is the real hero. I don't think she really sings. This was my first time. I did not listen to this theme song because I wanted to see it live in the theater.
No.
And I can't remember the melody. I mean, for all the shit people talked about Sam Smith, I remember that song. I could tell you the melody to that song. Well, a lot of people hated it.
I remember because I hated it.
I didn't even the song finished, and I was like, "Wait, was that a song?" She just Billie Eilish has been blown out of proportion because she's cute, But her brother makes some sick beats, and then she whispers over the top of it, and then she wins a Grammy because she's young and hot, and that's what they do. They give all the awards to like the young and hot because they're gonna have long careers and they want to bank on it.
Sure.
But with her, and again, it's not to strictly put her down, but for this song, I'm like, was that a song? What I was like, was somebody just whispering over like a loose bit? I for everything I ever heard about Sam Smith's song about people not liking it, all of that applied to this for me, and I'm like, I think Sam Smith's song was pretty decent.
I hated the Sam Smith. Okay, here's the thing.
It's no Skyfall, and it followed Skyfall, but
I don't like the Sam Smith song, and I do agree with you. I think this could have been better, but I liked this movie at least a little bit more.
Corey says mumble music. I agree.
And I don't disagree.
Whispering. She just whispered. Disagree. Like I if I could remember the melody, I'd be going, well, at least it was something. But yeah, so she was again, like we always point out, she was only chosen because she recently won a Grammy, and I mean they need to be picking just. They need to go back to like a merit system and not just like the hottest thing at the time. But if only.
It's always been that way.
I'll leave it at that.
It's always been the hottest thing at the time.
My beer is somewhat almost empty, but
my beer. Let's finish our beers.
We got through everything. To every fellas that are watching. Clink. All right.
Clink. All right, who are we toasting to? Are we toasting to?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Let's toast to Craig. Did you finish your beer?
I already finished it. To Daniel Craig.
Yeah, to Daniel Craig, and not Billie Eilish.
All right.
That was 2 brews in my belly. All right, look out for GoldenEye. Give me some time. It's GoldenEye. I want to do a good job on it. Get some rest, McCurdy. Your voice sounds like shit. So
yes, it sounds like Batman or Marge's sister. Hi, honey.
Go crawl in bed with your wife. Okay, good night.